Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the McGill Dementia Education Program's Caring Conversations, a free community outreach initiative to provide virtual support to care partners of people living with dementia. Our program offers a comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support people living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. An important resource is Dementia, Your Companion Guide, which is available to download online in 14 languages. You may also be interested in our free online course designed to educate and support care partners of people living with dementia. It's available in English and French and consists of 10 self-guided online modules that you can go through at your own pace. Caring Conversations is an initiative of the McGill Dementia Education Program and is supported by private donations. This episode and all episodes this year are supported by the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation. And now let's meet our moderators. Lucy Barylak received her Master of Social Work from the McGill School of Social Work. She's developed evidence-based training for seniors and caregivers, and she's lectured in the field of social gerontology and presented at major conferences. Her research studies have been published in numerous journals. Ms. Barylak received the Queen's Jubilee Award for her important role in developing a national coalition to support caregivers across Canada. Joanne Besner is an educator, professional coach, and caregiver. She received her Bachelor of Social Work and Master of Business Administration from McGill University. Her 35-year career in public community health in Quebec spans many roles, including frontline case manager, clinical supervisor, manager, researcher, and trainer. Today's topic is the positive aspects of caregiving. Lucy and Joanne will share research results on the positive aspects of caregiving, including the health and well-being benefits that it can bring. In this last webinar of the season, we invite care partners to share their positive experiences so that we can collectively celebrate this special role. We ask that you keep your microphones turned off. We will unmute people as needed once we open the discussion. Please note that we are recording today's webinar, and the recording will be posted on the Caring Conversations page of our website. And with that, please begin, ladies.
Thank you, Diane, as always, for your beautiful intro. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our final live webinar of the season. So those of you who have been with us through other webinars know that the approach that Lucy and I take here in Caring Conversations is to offer support and acknowledge the challenges that care partners face in caring for someone living with dementia. The journey can often seem so out of our control. We can get caught up in focusing on the things that are negative or difficult, and that's human nature. Sometimes it can be hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel. Today, we're here to recognize some of the wonderful lights in the tunnel, not just at the end of one. And in no way is it our intention today to discount the hardships. Many of you wrote into us with similar comments when you heard what our topic was today. You wrote to us, and I'm going to share a few. Is there a positive aspect for the caregiver? Because I cannot think of any. Another one of you shared, not sure there are many. And someone else wrote, caregiving may be beneficial for the patient and the government, but for the caregiver, it is not rewarding. And of course, we hear you. Even research on caregiving has more often focused on the burden of caregiving and how to cope better, and far less attention has been given to promoting the positive aspect of caregiving. But today we want to bring our attention to the positive, to share with you some of the latest research studies. And as well, Lucy and I are going to share our own experiences, and we hope that if you are comfortable, some of you will also share your positive caring moments so we can celebrate together in this very special community that we have created.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Good morning, everybody. So what the latest research says is that having a positive outlook as a care partner is associated with better stress management, which links to better health outcomes for caregivers and care recipients. We will share several studies that support the premise that how you get through this role will impact your outcomes and your well-being. Now, PAC stands for Positive Aspects of Caregiving. The first study we want to look at is from the International Journal of Nursing Studies that was done in 2018. The study focused upon the positive aspect of caregiving in dementia. The study focused upon the positive aspects of caregiving in dementia. This research looked at the findings of almost 4,000 articles on caregiving, of which, incidentally, only 40 articles linked to positive aspects of caregiving. Their findings show positivity in 4 areas. So those are a sense of personal accomplishment, feelings of mutual intimacy and closeness, an increase of family cohesion and functionality, and a sense of personal growth and purpose. The study showed the importance of having personal and social affirmation of one's caregiving role, praise and appreciation of the role, which is why peers and other family members need to validate the role of caregivers and do our utmost to support one another in this experience. So, Joanne, I really would like to know, can you share a little bit about your feelings about this research in terms of your caregiving experience?
Yeah, it was interesting to look at this, and I'm just going to go through each one briefly. That first one, a sense of personal accomplishment. So I do think when we take on, a really a challenging role, especially as a care partner, but it could be in anything. It does, if we allow it and focus and think about the good stuff, it does give us a sense of personal accomplishment. However, we're so wired to look at the negative, so it takes a little bit of effort. And I want to share, it reminded me of a story that I had while I was caring for my father, and my parents were always in and out of hospitals. But this was one where my dad was hospitalized, and I'm sure many people here today have gone through this, in the hospital emergency ward in a Montreal large hospital for 3 days in a corridor on a stretcher, not 1, not 2, but 3 days. And it was tough. It was unpleasant, but it got to day 3, and my father hadn't been washed. And I could tell he was so distressed, and there's no dignity there. And I set my mind to found a wonderful angel, a care attendant. And amidst all the chaos in the hallway with tons of people, he managed to pull a curtain and give my father a wonderful sponge bathe that he needed. And my dad, this is what I remember, not the yucky 3 days that he was in emergency, but what I do remember is how wonderful he felt after that, and how wonderful I felt about having been able to accomplish it. So I remember that. And I encourage you, because it's hard sometimes as a healthcare professional. Having a personal sense of accomplishment was hard for me because I expected so much of myself. I knew the system. I knew how to talk to people. I expected it should run well, and many times it didn't. So I share that with you. And what I found interesting is that that's what stood out, this wonderful experience. And it also goes into the second one of feelings of intimacy and closeness. There's no question that going through these experiences brought my dad and I closer, but I would be interested to hear from spousal caregivers if they also, later in our conversation, if they brought them closer. The third one, an increase of family cohesion and functionality. For sure, going through caregiving in the pandemic, this is a real highlight. for me. And again, you know, some families we know have a lot of conflict in caregiving. We've done a webinar on it. But it does, or it did for me, almost force us in the pandemic when we were all so isolated. We had to use the technology. We had to get together regularly. So we kind of had this Friday get together on caregiving, all the family on Zoom. And it definitely, you know, if we didn't have the caregiving, I don't know if we would have really spent as much time together. The last one is sense of personal growth and purpose. I think this comes not when you're in the thick of it, but maybe when you take a step back. And for everyone here, I invite you to do that. But if you really take a step back and look at yourself as a caregiver today and maybe as a caregiver months or years ago, it definitely, we learn skills, we grow, we learn new things, and there's definitely a sense of purpose. So I could relate to this study, Lucy.
Thank you
I,
for sharing.
yeah.
Yeah, because the whole idea behind it is what you remembered as a positive experience. The next study I want to present to you it was in the Gerontologist in 2019. This is the first review to explore the impact of PACT on dementia caregiving well-being comprehensively. They concluded that just being able to identify positive aspects of caregiving is associated with higher caregiver well-being. For a caregiver to feel positive aspect was also associated with lower depression symptoms and burden, better mental health, quality of life, satisfaction with life, and competence, self-efficiency. And I think this is really, really good to hear. And it's another reason why talking about this topic amongst ourselves is good for us and very encouraging.
Yeah, and so now this next study, I found it really compelling. This one, where past studies focus on increased physical and mental symptoms in caregivers and decreased life expectancy, this new study brings some evidence that women who are caregivers may actually have a lower risk of death. So this was from a really recent study, January 2024, in the Journal of American Geriatric Society. And it looked at caregiving related information gathered from 158,000 postmenopausal women enrolled in a landmark Women's Health Initiative study. So at the start of the study, 40% of women self-reported as caregivers. This is who they studied. But so to be fair, this study is not exclusive to those caring for persons living with dementia. It includes all caregivers. And we must acknowledge there are differences. All the same, interestingly, during an average follow-up after 17 years, the rate of death from all causes was 9% lower in caregivers compared with non-caregivers. This was true even for those who provided care intensely, at least 5 times a week, despite additional stressors that high frequency, like intensive caregiving may bring. So I was, pretty shocked by the results of this study. And it made me think, like, what could explain this? So it made me think of the chicken and the egg. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are healthier people more likely to remain caregivers, or are caregivers more likely to remain healthier? Which brings us to that question, do some tasks of caregiving promote healthy living? And the answer is yes. The interpersonal benefits of caregiving are another protective factor. Caregiving can instill a sense of usefulness and purpose, which is exactly what Lucy was pointing out in the first study that she shared. And caregivers think about it, you're not alone, so they may also be less likely to be socially isolated. These factors can promote health and longevity. However, we have to be careful when we interpret research. The Mayo Clinic's experts point out there definitely needs to be further research, and providing support for caregivers remains a very important and often complex issue. We need more research to explore ways to best help caregivers manage their health and quality of life, especially for those who have limited supportive resources. But that being said, we can comfortably conclude that positivity is good for us. And again, research by Shirzad Shamin of Positive Intelligence. And for those of you who've been with us, know that this is my personal go-to approach, and I talk about positive intelligence quite a bit. So what he says is, or he offers us the following. When bad things happen, we have a choice: accept or convert. Now, what does this mean? This comes from the belief that every problem or obstacle can be converted eventually to an opportunity or sometimes even a gift. Now, you may say, come on, how can we feel positive when confronted by the illness of dementia? And again, we do not want to dismiss the hardships. We do not want to advocate toxic positivity, denying the disease, or we do not want to deny our emotions of sadness or anger. We're not glad this happened, of course not. But given that it has happened, what's the most productive mindset and way of dealing with life? So the question is, we're listening to all these studies that tell us the more positive we are, the more healthier we can be. How do we get there and practice what the research tells us that's important for our well-being? It has to start with acceptance. And for this, I'm going to pass you back to Lucy to share her views on why this is the starting point and how she used acceptance in her caregiving journey.
Thank you, Joanne. Well, I have to really say that acceptance is the key factor. Because if we don't accept the situation we're in, we cannot move forward. And in my personal caregiving journey, it didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of time for me to accept the situation that I was in. But once I accepted it, it empowered me because I kind of felt that I had more control in a way. I accepted this is what it is. Now what can I do about it? So let's look at how do we even start? We know that our thoughts influence our feelings, so it makes sense that reframing negative emotion is a positive way that may help us. And I think Joanne's story about her father was really exactly what we're talking about. But I want to also say there are negatives and challenges. This is part of the process of acceptance, and denial is one of the biggest hurdles. It is so important to be able to accept the situation that you are presently in. Acceptance is necessary for your healing process. To practice acceptance, you must acknowledge all the uncomfortable parts of yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, and your past, your relationship with the person you're caring for. You know, we have heard your comments in previous sessions. It isn't the same to care for a parent with dementia as a spouse or a partner, and we hear you. Your couple life has turned upside down, but there is the reality that your partner is still there, but not the same person that they were before. Accepting your present situation can influence the rest of your caregiving journey.
But Lucy, and I'm like, it all sounds like, okay, great. But what do we do when we just don't feel like being positive, when we're just not in the mood?
And we feel that many times, as I did myself. I'm going to repeat this again because this is so important. Whatever feeling you're feeling, whether you're angry, you're upset, you're nervous, first acknowledge your feelings and try to understand where those feelings are coming from. Why am I angry today? Why do I feel as I feel? And what I want to say that it's okay to have a bad day. We're only human. But in that moment is where some self-compassion would be most appreciated. And yet it's not something many of us think about. Self-compassion can be an extremely positive habit to nurture that doesn't have to do with smiles we associate with positivity. Self-compassion is being warm and kind to ourselves and towards others rather than feeling inadequate or self-criticize and feel like you're a victim. Give yourself permission to feel sorry for yourself, but it should be time limited. Now that is the key, okay? So what I want to tell you is don't be so hard on yourself. Forgive yourself. Give yourself permission to move forward. However, if you can't seem to do that, I usually give myself a day to wallow in my sorrows. And once I do it, I give myself permission. I do move on. But if you find yourself that you really can't get out of it would be a very good idea to get some professional help.
Yeah. So, Lucy, what can you tell us a little bit about what was the turning point for you where you were able to see those positive aspects?
I want to say that it took a while. Okay, I was caring for my mother. I'm an only child. But when I saw my mother smile when I walked through the door one day, not only was she smiling, but she was so happy to see me, it hit me. I realized that I was the one person that was in the position to give her the best life possible, given the fact that she had so many physical and cognitive challenges. But I want to emphasize, before I could see the positive side of caregiving, I had to accept my mother for who she was at that time and the position that I was put in with a family and working full time. I really felt positive that I was able to connect with her and enjoy certain moments of my experience. And I have to say that I was happy to care for her at that point, as well as I could, as she cared for me.
Very moving.
It was challenging, but it was a process. I'm so glad I got to that place because things really were much easier for both of us. But I want to conclude with one last study done in 2022, published in Aging and Public Health, looking at the caregivers of people with dementia and positive coping skills. We want to share some concrete tips that they found to be helpful. So one is noticing positive events, okay? And I can remember many positive events, and they give me such peace. She's no longer with us. Really noticing, being aware of the good things in your life as an antidote to narrowly focusing on the negative. We can do this by reframing events. Capitalize on positive events. This is a way of extending and savoring good feelings, such as by telling someone else. You can share it with a friend, a family member. It's not only about caregiving. You could share about a great book you read, a show you saw, just looking at the positivity all around you, or a wonderful moment with your care recipient. And one thing that I found very helpful was writing it down or recalling the event later. The example of journaling, we talked about this in one of our first sessions as a helpful way to process what are your feelings. Mindfulness, all right, being aware of the present moment, accepting the reality of the now. This concept can be a bit elusive. How does one stay in the present and be mindful as a caregiver. Okay, seriously, there's so many thoughts turning around in our head, what we have to do next, what is around the corner. Quieting our mind and practicing mindfulness is easier said than done. But it does take practice. There is a beginning stage to that. I was just, we received a few comments from participants, and I just wanted to share this one because it kind of fits so well. It touched both me and Joanne. And I quote, the person wrote, I'm learning to enjoy a slower pace, appreciation by the person I care for. The other thing they're looking at is, it's so important noting personal strength, recognizing the personal resources you have internally, inside you, and from outside help. As an antidote to feeling helpless, you have strength. Otherwise, you could not be in this role. So you should be asking yourself, what are your strengths? Recognize them. Are you exceptionally patient, caring, organized, capable? Not doing it alone and letting people support you shows great strength. Gaining knowledge like being here today. Again, ask yourself, what strengths are in me and what strengths are coming out as you caregive. Now, setting attainable goals for yourself. This is so important so you can feel good when you accomplish them. For example, deciding to set limits, to say no without feeling guilty. That's a big one for all of us. It can be very challenging, but doable goal with practice. I promise, once you say no once or twice, it gets easier. And of course, focus on the good things. Practice gratitude. Open yourself to humor instead of choosing, let's say, a drama on Netflix. Choose a comedy and let yourself laugh out loud. It really feels good. Now, this is important. Spend time with positive people. Negativity it really is contagious, as is positive energy. Choose your company wisely. You can really get caught up in negativity.
Yeah.
All right. So we know that not every day is going to be a walk in the park, but it's so important to try to live in the moment. When people have short-term memory loss, their lives are made up of moments. We're not able to create perfectly wonderful days for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, but we can create perfectly wonderful moments. Moments that put a smile on their faces and a twinkle in their eyes. 5 minutes later, they will not remember what we did or said, but the feeling that we left them will linger. The same is true for us. Claiming joy is a survival tactic. It doesn't mean we're in a constant state of happiness. We can take delight or pleasure in something, even if the feeling is brief. Appreciating that the instant can be a force for survival. Think about each moment of joy as a driving force, the motivation that drives you to endure and overcome challenges. Consider joyful moments as momentum. Practice makes progress, not perfect. So, with having said all that, it would be great if we can now have a caring conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to listen to you. And you might have tips that you would like to share. And let's get going.
Okay.
Hi, ladies. I just want to share a comment that came through in the chat while you were giving your presentation. So Christine says, this is the first time I've heard of the positive sides of caregiving. Thank you. All this time I thought caregiving was going to negatively harm me emotionally, physically, and financially.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have to say in the same breath, it hurts sometimes. It really does. And I want to repeat that we're not here with rose-colored glasses, but we're this thing about being human is, and I think they say for every I think three or four positive things that happen, we need like 24, or for every four negative things that happen, we need 24 positive things to happen to make us forget the negative, because we tend to do that. That's why it's so important to talk about it here today.
Yeah, we really felt very strongly about that because we went through the process ourselves, and there comes a point where you kind of have to step back and kind of look at the bigger picture. And I truly believe that each and every one of you has many positive moments that you've identified for yourself. Otherwise, you probably would not be doing what you're doing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I'm hoping that somebody's going to share, even in the chat, or if you're brave, raise your hand and share with us one, a positive experience. And until we get stuff out of the chat, I guess Lucy and I, we're going to chit chat. What I wanted to say, Lucy, is when Lucy said, hang around with positive people, that's why Lucy and I hang around together. Because we share, we work together, we're close friends, we share a lot of the tough stuff, but we're very, very careful to come back and try to say, okay, this is really not good, but let's try and think of something positive that we can end with. And it makes me think of really that thing of, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if you believe that it will be positive, it will be. If you believe it's all negative, unfortunately, it will be. And I think that's what the research is really trying to tell us.
I think there's a lot on the chat. I'll leave it with Diane.
Sorry. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you can see the chat, but Suzanne wanted to comment. So if you're ready for that, I'll ask her to unmute.
Oh, super. Yes.
Sure. I know a little bit about like the post-traumatic stress literature. And I think it was maybe about 10 years ago that people stopped only looking at the post-traumatic stress, and there was a whole movement to look at post-traumatic growth, where people who, like some studies of people who were on buses that were bombed in Israel or whatever, and people finding that they are all of a sudden recognizing that they're capable of responding to really difficult events. They find that they can be brave, that they can be. So for myself, I have found that, I'm not typically a very patient person. My husband has Parkinson's, and he's developing cognitive decline, and he does weird things. And I've learned to be more patient and to take different things that he would do and just let them go. And then I am growing as a person. I'm also a devout Christian, and I see that really as, we mentioned purpose and accomplishment, and I see it in a spiritual light that this is the person that God has put in my path, and my job is really to help him. And so I really see it as almost a mission, if you will.
Thank you so much, Susan. I mean, Suzanne, that's exactly what it is when you can kind of, and it creeps up on you. I don't know. When you asked me that question, Joanne, I couldn't tell you exactly when it happened. It was a process. But that particular day, I came in every day, but that particular day, it hit me. And so, I mean, give yourself an opportunity to first accept and get to that point.
So, Suzanne, I'm interested if I could just ask you, What would you say to your fellow caregivers here today? Like being in that position and having found that for yourself? If is there anything else you would, I hate using the word advice, but more share, you shared about religion. Is there anything else that might help someone who's just kind of stuck?
Well, I know that one thing that helps me a great deal is I get up about 2 hours before my husband does. And I spend that time alone in the solarium with spiritual reading and prayer. And that really grounds me, I think. And, for somebody else, it's meditation without a religious context. But um, there have been times when I didn't have that time and I just got grumpy. I was not as patient because I didn't have that 2 hours in the morning.
That's such a good thing to add. And Lucy and I often talk about this. Lucy always talks about how important it is to maybe get in nature or take a walk. What I love about what you just said is that whole thing of filling your tank. If you don't take care, we always say, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. And people say, well, I don't have time. And I know it's a tall order. But the truth is, if you do something like what you're saying, you're giving yourself the gift of getting up early and taking time for yourself and filling your tank. And you're saying that when then you're more equipped. You can find the patients that you're telling us that you've found. When you don't do it, like you're so depleted. How can we expect more of ourselves?
Yeah. And it's tempting to use those 2 hours to try to get to some of those things on my do list, pay some bills, do something like that. But those are mostly things that I could do if he's up and wandering around and I have to keep an eye on him. But quiet time, uninterrupted quiet time is precious.
So let's put out a challenge to anybody. We're not asking 2 hours, right? But maybe even if you can get up 20 minutes earlier and give yourself a little space and time, you can relate a bit to what Suzanne's sharing with us. Oh, thank you so much.
So next we have Christine, who wanted to share as well. Christine, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm really enjoying the discussion. I have to say that in the past, since 2018, when I started working in the older adult field, I've been exposed to a lot of negative, not only literature, but conversation about caregiving, because you're always caring for the people who are burnt out and worried about them. So I say this, I'm so embarrassed to say this is one of the first times I've ever heard of positive aspects to caregiving, which I have experienced myself. And I kind of think of it like a secret that some people who have kind of gone through the threshold, and I don't know what that threshold is, but you've gone through it, you're stuck in there, and then somehow suddenly there are wonderful moments that you can't describe. But I do admit that I have been on an emotional roller coaster with my dad, who has vascular dementia. So it's like what Ted was saying, letting go of the past. For us siblings, my co-caregivers, we have to let go of the things that were not perfect in our family. And it's very difficult when you're trying to care for him and he's showing some traits that have been very irritating and annoying for us in the past when he was pre-dementia. So there's so much involved in overcoming one's tendency to be negative and resentful. And I like what Suzanne was saying, that we have to make time to reground ourselves in what is important, what are our values. And when I do that, Suzanne, I also find that I am stronger and I can be present and try and help him enjoy his life as it is right now, rather than have all these things cloud my thinking and my emotion as I'm doing those caregiving tasks. Thanks for letting me share.
Oh, goodness. Amazing, Christine. You kind of put it all together.
Yeah.
Everything that we are trying to kind of bring across. Because even talking about the past, the relationship that you had with your father, that has to let go because he's not the person that he was. Thank you so much for sharing. It meant an awful lot to me because I could really relate to what you were saying.
I have a few comments in the chat that I can share.
Great.
So Marley's types, I'm not sure that there won't be physical or financial implications. However, what keeps me going is, as you say, the wonderful moments, although they may be few and far between. Also, I think of how I will feel, so very proud and relieved that I stepped up as my mother's caregiver when no one else would.
Yeah, you were giving yourself gratitude, which is this is what we're talking about. And it's so important when other family and friends, family members and friends acknowledge and say, you're doing a good job. It's important to hear that it's not that you need a pat on the shoulders, but that's what keeps us going.
Yeah. And, I think we have to also acknowledge, it's not for everyone. Like, it is interesting sometimes in families when some people will, as our last sharer just said, step up. Sometimes people step up because, oh my God, nobody else is doing it. And they, I feel obligated. Sometimes people feel like it's their mission. One of our past speakers just said that. But it's not everyone that can step up and do it in a healthy and positive way. It's a challenge, and recognizing the growth could be so rewarding. So love that share. Love that.
We have another share from Ted. Being present rather than dwelling on the past, which isn't coming back, or the future, which I can't predict. So just enjoying being of service without expecting thanks works for me most of the time.
Great.
Yeah, great points. Great point.
I think Palmer wanted to say something.
Yes, hi. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, little background. My wife and I have been together for 36 years. It's second time around for each of us. And it's been the best 36 years of my life, despite what has been happening over the last 7. So she got her diagnosis of dementia, probably Alzheimer's, but definitely mixed with frontotemporal aphasia 7 years ago in Alberta. And I brought her back to Quebec to be close to family. Hasn't really worked out. Her children, my stepchildren, have to a great extent buried her. She is now in a CHSLD because I simply couldn't care for her 24 hours a day. Doubly incontinent, very aphasic. It started with reading. It's interesting. I'm in the field of linguistics, and I noticed her saying 10 years ago, the subtitles in those foreign movies are going too fast. And I understood immediately, no, it's not the subtitles. Your brain is slowing down. It's not processing more than the first 2 words. Anyway, so she's now in a CHSLD, and I'm going through a hard time. I go in every day at 4:30, and I toilet her, which is World War III. I have the scratches.
Wow.
I keep her fingernails as short as possible, but she goes from trembling with joy when she sees me. She recognizes me, doesn't always remember my name, maybe doesn't even know I am her husband of 36 years, but I'm a familiar face. But then when I try and toilet her, she's always was a very private, strong, independent person. And so she spits and she screams and she swears and she scratches and punches. And this is the same with showering with the orderlies. She's been in the same CHSLD for, excuse me, 7 months. And to begin with, it seemed like she was better able to respond to strangers invading her personal space than me. But it's now become difficult for her too. And she has one-on-one care. Um, I managed our finances to the extent that there is money to pay for one-on-one companion from before she wakes up in the morning until 4:30 when I arrive, 7 days a week. And we've been fairly successful with our caregivers, the main one. So that's the fact that the ratio in CHSLDs, as anybody knows who's knows what goes on, something like 3 orderlies, préposés aux bénéficiaires, PABs, 3 to 35 residents, if they're all there, if they're not on break, if they didn't call in sick because there was a snowstorm. And they can be in crisis at the other end of the wing while you need help with toileting, with cleaning, with calming down. So I have a gratitude jar, and whenever something good goes through my mind, like the fact of having these caregivers, like still more or less having my own health, and for the fact that she does recognize me, I scribble a little note on a piece of paper and put it in my gratitude jar. And every now and again, I shake out all the pieces of paper and go through them, and it lifts my mood. I play music when I go in with my wife. When I'm feeding her supper in the dining room, I play some of her favorite singers, Charles Aznavour, Edith Piaf, Nana Mouskouri, etc., etc. And as the dining room empties out, she's very, very slow to eat. It takes over an hour for her to finish her soup, main dish, dessert, her drinks. We dance. I get her out of her wheelchair and we dance very, very slowly. She's not very mobile anymore, to the music. And you can feel sometimes I'll play a song that she remembers and starts to cry. There are sad songs as well as happy songs. So she still recognizes the names of loved ones. And if I can get them to talk to her, if not visit, then she's able to say a few words, fixed phrases. How are you doing? That's nice. Sometimes even I love you. So these are a few of the things that I do. It's tough, and it's getting tougher. It's getting tougher, but at least I get to go home. She was in danger from me. I was in danger from myself.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness for all its faults, and there are many. The Quebec system has responded. It was very strange. I was screwing up my own courage to take her into the hospital we normally use, where they have a file, and say, I just can't handle this anymore. Not 24/7, not all night, not all day. And I brought her in for a suspected urinary tract infection. But then she presented full-on advanced dementia. And God bless them, they turned to me and said, go home, look after yourself. We'll take over. You can't possibly keep doing this. This was from the hospital staff. And because we had gone there over the previous 2 years, she'd been hospitalized not long after we returned from Alberta. We had gone on what amounted a cruise and a honeymoon to New York City. But when she came back, she went delusional. You have a girlfriend. She's living downstairs. I don't know where, but she comes up, and these are her things. These are her towels. Ratty old towels that she'd had for 30 years. These are her towels. So eventually, after a week of this and trying to bring her kids in to talk rationalization, I went into the hospital, and they kept her for a week under observation. I was there every day, all day. And they said she'll grow out of it. And of course she did eventually. But then the other things started, the lack of mobility, the aphasia, etc. But because she had that file and that fast tracked her to a CLSC caregiver, who are the gatekeepers, as we all know.
Yeah.
So at least she was moved up with multiple tests. One gatekeeper was so bad they fired him. The CLSC fired a social worker. He was so incompetent. He claimed he had done a psychosocial assessment and he had not. And all kinds of complications. When you move back to Quebec after 19 years away, if you've updated your will in another province, it's now a foreign document, and it has to be homologated, which takes months and thousands of dollars. But we eventually did it. So the goal of care is comfort. But she's very, very strong. Her legs are weak, but her upper body. Some of the orderlies nickname her the boxer.
Wow.
You certainly touched our hearts, I could say, as well. And I could see the looks on some of the people's faces. Thank you so much for sharing. And what you said about those special moments that you write them down and you put them in a jar, that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to say, is to be able to find the positive aspects and to hold them close to your heart. And the other thing, Joanne always say, there's two people in this relationship, right? One does not outweigh the other, and that you have to take care of yourself. I don't know what else to say, Palmer. Joanne,
I just want to share, and I see some of the comments. You gave me goosebumps. We're here with you. What a love story. And just I can't tell you how much I'm sure everybody appreciates your sharing.
Thank you. I feel the support. I do.
Here with us.
I joined the Alzheimer's Society of Alberta and the Northwest Territories in October 2020. And for a while, I wasn't able to attend because once my wife heard me on the computer talking about her, and she was absolutely furious. So we've been back in Quebec for 3 years. And as I say, the first 2 years just slowly got worse. But right up until the day before she was accepted in the hospital into the geriatric ward, prior to going to the hospital's own CHSLD in Hotel Dieu. I don't know if you know, the Jewish General has a floor as a kind of.
I just want to say, for those participants who are not from Quebec, CHSLD is another name for a long-term care nursing home. So people understand.
I forget there are people outside. So that group has been very supportive, and I would urge people to join as many support groups as they can. Some are better than others, some are bigger than others, some are better run than others. The Alzheimer's Society of Montreal has been of incredible help. I'll be walking on the 24th to raise funds for them. The Alzheimer Group Limited in Western Côte Saint-Luc is good. The Cumming Center runs a wonderful, they used to call it the drop-in program. I'm sure it was never drop-in, but it was very good. My wife had to leave that group because she was becoming so disruptive with her aphasia. But they did provide, the Cumming Center, the Alzheimer's Society, provided tremendous support, and everybody should take advantage of these groups that are providing stimulating caregiving activities, respite care. Some of the nursing homes do have temporary rooms for up to a week or even more of respite care, and I availed myself of that in February and July of last year. So my wife went into permanent care, first in the hospital and then in the nursing home in August. So that's 9 months ago. and the nursing home proper, where she is now, has been for the last 7 months. And it's, as I say, they're doing their best. But I see what happens when there is no companion or no spouse, child to go in and help with the feeding and the toileting and the stimulation and the wheeling to the activities if they're not cancelled, because there's been a viral outbreak in my wife's pavilion for the past month. So very restricted ability to go outside of the wing where she is. But still they bring in musicians, and music seems to be reaching her better than any other activity. There's a man who comes in and plays his mandolin. First his father died, then his mother died, but he still comes in as a
For the others.
volunteer for the rest of us. Yeah.
There is so much. I mean, you're touching on many of the subjects that we've been actually presenting, the difficulties of navigating the healthcare system, long-term care facilities. Yeah, there's a lot to take in when you're a caregiver. But at the same time, just hearing from some of you that you see the positive aspect, that there is some joy, and that you need to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for enriching our session. It's Palmer or Mr. Palmer?
Palmer is the first name.
Palmer, thank you. I think you really contributed to making this a special place for all of us. This was what Lucy and I aspired for, was that it's because it's so meaningful from you. So really from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Palmer. And if you look at the chat, you'll see so many of the people who are here with us today have also added some comments to say how much they appreciate your sharing.
Thank you. I'm looking.
Yes.
So I'm just we're coming to the end of our time together. So I'm gonna just wrap up right now. I'm gonna start by saying thank you so much to Joanne and Lucy, and to everyone who joined us today, who participated, who listened. Like with all of our episodes, today's episode has been recorded and will be posted on the Caring Conversation page of our website, mcgill.ca/dementia. So if you haven't visited our website yet, I encourage you to please go visit it and make use of all the incredible free resources that we offer. We want to know what you think of Caring Conversations. So I've added a short evaluation link in the chat. We'll also email it to you. So if you could take a few minutes to complete that, it really helps us to have your feedback and to know what topics you're interested in going forward. So today is our last episode of Caring Conversations for this season. We'll let you know what our plans are for the next season in the late summer, but please be sure to sign up for our newsletter so that you can stay informed of our upcoming initiatives. Thanks again, and have a good summer, everyone.
Take care.
Please take care of yourselves.